All right, let's dive into something, well, something kind of strange. It's an ancient legal problem that on the surface seems totally bizarre, but I promise you it reveals an absolutely incredible way of thinking.
So, picture this. The whole dilemma that these ancient Talmudic sages were grappling with, it all centers on one very specific and, let's be honest, pretty gnarly scenario.
Imagine a skewer, heated up until it's glowing white hot, and it hits someone. Now, the question that these thinkers obsessed over was this: is that wound, legally speaking, a boil or a burn? I know, it sounds like they're splitting hairs, but you gotta stick with me here, because the answer had some seriously major consequences.
So, why on earth did this tiny distinction matter so much? Well, it all comes down to the ancient laws around leprosy, which, it turns out, demanded incredibly precise definitions for how you classify different kinds of wounds.
Okay, so first things first, let's get our terms straight. A boil, what was that? It was a wound caused by a physical blow from something that was not heated by fire. You know, think getting hit with a stick or a rock. It's all about the physical impact.
And on the other hand, you have a burn. A burn was a wound caused by something that was heated by fire. So we're talking about a hot coal, maybe some boiling limestone, or even just hot water. Here, it's all about the heat.
Okay, but again, why was it so critical to tell these two apart? The answer is hiding in a simple but totally unbending legal rule.
And here's where it all clicks into place. See, to be declared impure, a leprous mark had to be a certain size. 2 half-boils? Yep, they could combine to make one full, legally significant boil. 2 half-burns? Same deal. But, and this is the absolute kicker, a half-boil and a half-burn could not combine. No way. They were treated as completely separate things. So if you already had a half-boil, and then you got hit by that hot skewer, well, the identity of that new wound would literally determine your fate.
And this brings us right to the heart of the puzzle. A white-hot skewer does 2 things at almost the exact same instant. It hits you with force, and it singes you with intense heat. It's like a split-second race.
So you've got this physical blow, and you've got this intense heat, and they're happening pretty much at the same time. The sages had a rule for situations like this. The effect that happens last is the one that legally defines the wound. It basically cancels out the first one. But which one is first?
Okay, so let's look at theory number 1. This argument says the physical blow lands just a fraction of a second before the heat can do its damage. So first the impact creates a boil. Right after that, the heat creates a burn. According to the rules, that later effect, the burn, wipes out the earlier one. The final result, the wound is legally a burn. Make sense, right?
But hold on, what about the other side of the coin? Theory 2 argues that the crazy, radiant heat from a white-hot skewer actually sears the skin an instant before the physical thing even makes contact. So the heat creates a burn first, then the physical blow follows up, creating a boil. And in that case, the boil is the later effect, so it cancels out the burn. The final result? The wound is a boil. You see the problem here, right? It's a total paradox.
So they were stuck, unable to solve this just with pure logic. The sages did what brilliant thinkers always do. They went looking for a precedent, for an example, and they found a potential clue in a completely different area of law. They decided to turn their attention to the super detailed laws of kosher slaughter. They were hoping they could find an analogy there that might just crack this case open. And they found a perfect one. In this question, what happens if you try to slaughter an animal with a white-hot knife? See, for the slaughter to be kosher, it has to be a clean cut. If the heat from the knife burns the windpipe before it's actually cut, then the whole thing is invalid. So again, which comes first, the cut or the burn?
And here, they struck gold. They found a clear ruling on this exact issue. The text says, cutting with the knife's sharp blade preceded the effect of its white heat. This must have felt like a huge aha moment. It looked like the problem was solved.
The logic here is pretty straightforward. This precedent from the slaughterhouse seems to suggest that the physical action, in that case the cut, is always considered to happen before the secondary effect of the heat. So there we go. It looks like we have an answer.
But not so fast. This is where this whole process really shows its genius. The sages didn't just accept this clue and call it a day. Oh no, they put it under intense logical pressure to see if it would break. So the big question became, does the case of the butcher's knife
really solve the mystery of the skewer? Is that analogy strong enough to build a whole legal case on?
And the answer they came to was a resounding no. Why? Because for an analogy to count as actual proof in their system, it couldn't just be good. It had to be perfect. And this one, as it turned out, just wasn't.
And here is exactly where the whole thing falls apart. A butcher's knife is designed to be sharp. Its main purpose is to make a precise cut. So it makes total sense that the blade's sharp edge acts before the heat. But a skewer, that's a blunt instrument. Its main purpose is a forceful blow. And with a blunt blow, it's not at all clear which comes first, the physical impact or the searing heat. The analogy therefore fails. It's flawed.
So after all of that back and forth, after all that debate, where does that leave us? Well, this is, for my money, the most brilliant part of the entire exercise.
Because, get this, in the end, the text leaves the question completely unresolved. It never gives us an answer. And that, right there, is the entire point. The goal wasn't just to find a quick and easy answer. It was to explore every single logical angle of a ridiculously complex problem.
You know, just by following this debate, we learned so much. We see the incredible, almost unbelievable precision they demanded from their legal definitions. We see the impossibly high standard of proof they required for an analogy to hold up. And most importantly, we see how much they valued the rigorous debate itself, way more than just finding a simple solution. They wanted to take the problem apart, piece by piece, right down to its absolute core.
And it leaves us with this huge question that feels surprisingly modern. How do you define a single event that has two immediate and completely inseparable consequences? The ancient puzzle of the hot skewer. It isn't just about boils and burns. It's a timeless masterclass in the simple, beautiful art of thinking clearly.